The silver moon, a sliver of bone against the bruised violet of the twilight sky, cast a cold, ethereal light over the midnight grove. It was a place of deep shadows and ancient oaks, a hallowed ground where my pack, the Moonshadows, had roamed for generations. For as long as I could remember, I had felt the pull of this land, the whisper of the wind through the leaves carrying the stories of my ancestors. I was Lyra, a daughter of the Moonshadows, a name that should have meant strength and ferocity. Yet it felt hollow. For all my 19 years, I had been unable to shift. My wolf, a creature that every other member of my pack had embraced with a primal roar in their youth, remained a silent, dormant ghost within me. My hands, my arms, my very bones stubbornly refused to twist and reshape themselves into the powerful form that was my birthright. I was an anomaly, a phantom wolf, and the quiet pity in my packmates' eyes felt heavier than any scorn. They didn't ostracize me, not openly, but I existed in a space just outside their circle of belonging, a shadow of the person I was meant to be. The whispers followed me like a breeze. Poor Lyra, she's a beta's daughter, but with no wolf. My father, an honourable and steadfast warrior named Alden, defended me fiercely, his quiet frustration a constant undercurrent to his unwavering love. He told me my wolf would come when it was ready, but his words were a balm over an unhealing wound. My mother, Lyra, a wise and gentle healer, had tried every herb and ritual in the pack's lore, but nothing stirred the beast within. I felt a constant ache of yearning, an emptiness in my soul that longed to be filled with the wild, untamed spirit of my wolf. It was an incompleteness that defined my existence, and it was a source of endless shame. Tonight, the shame felt particularly sharp. A handful of the younger wolves were preparing for their first hunt as newly shifted adults, their bodies lean and eager, their senses razor-sharp. I watched them from the edge of the clearing, the scent of their wildness, a bitter perfume in the air. Their laughter and easy camaraderie were a world away from my lonely vigil. I was a child playing at being an adult, and the pretense was wearing thin. My younger sister, Wren, only 15 but already a skilled pup, had shifted a year ago. Her wolf was a sleek, silver blur of kinetic energy, and the ease with which she transformed was a constant, painful reminder of my own failure. Tonight, she was with the hunting party, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chase. I knew they would return triumphant, a testament to their strength and unity, and I would return to my den, alone, with nothing but the silence of my unsheltered soul for company. As the moon climbed higher, painting the forest in stark shades of black and white, I slipped away from the pack's main gathering place. My feet carried me toward the borders of our territory, a forbidden journey, but one I often undertook when the weight of my inadequacy became too much to bear. The boundary was marked by a stream, the Coldwater Creek, its surface a ribbon of shimmering moonlight. On the other side, the territory of the rival pack, the Obsidian Claws, began. Hatred ran deep between our packs, a feud spanning generations, a tapestry woven with old betrayals and fresh bloodshed. They were a pack of brutal, ruthless warriors, we were told. They valued strength and power above all else, a primal mirror of our more civilized traditions. We were taught to hate them, to see them as monsters. to fear the very scent of their presence. I stopped at the edge of the creek, the icy water a natural barrier, and felt the familiar dread and fascination. It was a line I was never meant to cross, a truth I held as sacred. I was a Moonshadow, they were the enemy. I sat on a smooth, moss-covered rock, my gaze fixed on the dense, dark woods across the creek. A chilling breeze rustled the leaves, and the air grew heavy with an unfamiliar scent. Pine and rain and something else, something wild and distinctly animal, a scent that was both intoxicating and terrifying. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. I had smelled it before, but always faintly, on the wind. Never this close. My instincts, born of 1,000 whispered warnings, screamed at me to flee. But a strange magnetic curiosity held me in place. The scent grew stronger, a powerful presence moving with silent grace through the trees. I pressed myself against the trunk of an ancient oak, my breath held tight in my chest. A figure emerged from the shadows, a towering form that moved with a liquid, predatory grace. He was a man, but the raw power that radiated from him was anything but human. He was tall, his broad shoulders straining against the simple tunic he wore. His hair was the colour of a raven's wing, a stark contrast to his pale skin. And his eyes, even in the dim light, were a startling, icy blue, a flash of Arctic fire in the darkness. He was a warrior of the Obsidian Claws, I knew instinctively. The aura of danger around him was so palpable, it was almost a physical presence. He moved to the edge of the creek, and our gazes locked across the shimmering water. His expression, a mask of grim neutrality, shifted, his eyes narrowing in surprise as he took in my form, my clothing, the absence of a wolfish scent. He knew I was a Moonshadow. I saw the flash of recognition, the flicker of hatred that had been ingrained in both of us since birth. He saw me as the enemy, a representative of everything he had been taught to despise. But then, something unexpected happened. The hatred in his gaze was replaced by a look of something else, curiosity. He took a single, deliberate step into the cold water, the sound of his boots breaking the surface a loud crack in the quiet night. My body, trained to run from this kind of encounter, was frozen in place, a rabbit caught in a predator's gaze. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that was both a threat and an invitation. "You do not smell of a shifted wolf. You are a Moonshadow, yet you are not one of them, not truly." My voice was a shaky whisper. "I am Lyra, and you are a trespasser." It was a foolish thing to say, a useless protest. He was a trespasser, but I was the one who was powerless. He took another step, the water rising to his shins, and I could feel the invisible thread of tension tightening between us. He was a force of nature, a creature of raw, untamed power. I was a girl with a secret, a girl who couldn't even summon the beast within. His eyes, those piercing, cold blue eyes, were fixed on me, a deep intensity in their depths. "Lyra?" he repeated, the sound of my name on his lips, a strange, alien music. "I am Kael, and I am not a trespasser in this moment. We are both on the border." He was a wolf of the Obsidian Claws. I knew that name. Kael, the son of their Alpha, a warrior whispered to be as ruthless and formidable as his father. The air was charged with a dangerous, forbidden energy. "Go back," I said, my voice trembling now. "This is a mistake." But I didn't move. I was fascinated, paralyzed, drawn to him by some force I couldn't comprehend. He took a final step, his boot hitting the dry, mossy bank on my side of the creek, and the boundary was broken. I should have run. I should have screamed. Instead, I just stood there, watching him approach me, the scent of his wildness and his strength filling my lungs, my senses, my very soul. He stopped, just a few feet from me, his shadow falling over me like a dark cloak. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the raw power thrumming beneath his skin. My heart was a frantic drum, a rhythm of pure terror and something else, something far more dangerous. He raised a hand, his fingers long and calloused, a warrior's hand, and he reached out toward me. I flinched, my eyes squeezed shut, bracing myself for a strike, for the hatred that was a legacy between our packs. But his touch, when it came, was not a blow. It was a brush of his fingertips against my cheek, a soft feather-light caress. And in that moment, something within me awoke. A jolt of electricity, a fire long dormant, sparked to life in my veins. It was a sensation I had never felt before, a deep, resonant hum that started in my chest and vibrated through every cell of my body. It was a roar that was not a sound, but a feeling. My muscles tensed, my bones ached with a strange, pleasurable agony, and I felt a primal urge to fall to my knees, to embrace the transformation that was finally happening. I felt my teeth lengthening, my senses sharpening, the familiar world of human sight and sound giving way to a more vivid, wilder reality. The scent of him, Kael, was no longer just pine and rain. It was rich, earthy, a scent that spoke of deep woods and untamed wilderness, a scent that was inextricably linked to my awakening wolf. I stumbled back from his touch, my body trembling with the aftershocks of the sensation, the fire in my veins settling into a gentle warmth. My eyes flew open, and I stared at him, bewildered. He was staring back at me, his icy blue eyes wide with a shock that mirrored my own. Why was that? He breathed, his voice a low, stunned. Your sent it just came alive. My heart was still pounding, a frantic drum, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from a sense of pure, unadulterated awe. My wolf, my ghost, my shame had finally stirred, and it had taken a single, forbidden touch from my sworn enemy to awaken it. The truth was as terrifying as it was miraculous, a truth that could shatter the fragile peace between our packs. My strength, my very being, was now tied to the one person I was forbidden to love, to the one wolf I was taught to hate. The moonlight continued to cast its cold light over the trees, but for me, a single, unexpected spark had just ignited an inferno. I was no longer just Lyra, the phantom wolf. I was something else entirely. And my world had just been irrevocably changed. I stared at his hand, the hand that had touched my face, the hand that held the key to my freedom, and I knew that our lives were now bound together in a secret that would either save us both or destroy everything we held dear. Kael's eyes, a startling glacial blue against the pale canvas of his face, held mine with a disquieting intensity. His own hand, the one that had just brushed my cheek, was held suspended in the air, as if he could still feel the phantom hum of the dormant energy he had so unexpectedly awakened. We stood on the bank of the Coldwater Creek, the boundary a meaningless line between us now, our shared shock a more potent barrier than any stretch of water. I could still feel the ghost of the fire that had ignited within me, a gentle warmth that hummed just beneath my skin, a stark contrast to the cold fear that had been my constant companion for years. My senses felt heightened, sharper, the world around me suddenly more vibrant, more real. The scent of pine and rain on his skin was a complex, intoxicating fragrance, and the sound of his breathing, deep and steady, was a low thrum that resonated in my very bones. "What was that?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to the powerful rumble I had heard earlier. He was no longer the arrogant, predatory warrior I had been taught to fear. He was just a boy, a few years older than me, with a look of genuine bewilderment on his face. The rigid hatred that had defined our initial meeting had been completely swept away by the bizarre, impossible truth of what had just happened. "I don't know," I managed to stammer, my own voice shaky and thin. I've never felt that before. My wolf has never stirred, not ever." He took a step closer, his gaze falling from my eyes to my hands, which were now trembling slightly, a tremor that I knew was not from fear, but from the latent power that now pulsed within me. You're a Moonshadow, yet you can't shift?" he asked, a hint of something akin to awe in his voice. I nodded, shame and relief warring within me. The shame was a familiar companion, but the relief was a new and profound feeling. For the first time, someone had not simply pitied me, but had seen the truth of my weakness and reacted with a strange and humbling curiosity. "Our packs they're going to kill me if they see me here," I said, the gravity of the situation finally beginning to dawn on me. "You should go, now." But I didn't move, and neither did he. He was a puzzle, a contradiction. He was the enemy, the one I had been taught to despise, yet he was the one who had unlocked a door within me that had been sealed for a lifetime. He was the key to my freedom, and the source of my greatest peril. He shook his head slowly, his icy blue eyes never leaving mine. "I can't. I don't understand. This changes everything." He reached for me again, a silent, unspoken question in his gaze. He wanted to feel the spark, the fire, the truth of it again. My instincts screamed at me to pull away, to run, but something else, a deeper, more primal voice, urged me forward. It was my wolf, the one who had been so silent for so long, the one who now seemed to recognize the touch of her mate, the one whose very existence was tied to this strange and forbidden connection. I held out my hand, and he took it, his fingers wrapping around mine. The moment his skin touched mine, the fire that had just been a gentle hum roared to life again, a conflagration that raced through my veins. It was a sensation of such intense heat and power that it stole the air from my lungs. My knees buckled and I would have fallen if he hadn't tightened his grip, his other hand coming to cup the back of my neck. I felt my bones shifting. A slow, agonizing process that was both intensely painful and wildly exhilarating. I could feel my body contorting, my spine lengthening, my human form giving way to something stronger, faster, more complete. I felt my human self fading and my wolf rising, a beautiful, wild, and powerful creature. The shift was a rush, a torrent of sensation and raw instinct. The world exploded into a symphony of new sounds, new smells, and new textures. I could hear the faint scuttling of a mouse in the underbrush 100 yards away. I could smell the distinct scent of a deer that had passed by hours ago. And I could feel the earth beneath my paws, a living, breathing entity. I was no longer Lyra. I was a wolf. A pure white wolf, the colour of fresh snow, a stark contrast to the dark black and grey forms of the obsidian claws. I shook myself free of his hands and stood on all fours, my head held high, my senses reeling with the pure, unadulterated joy of being what I was meant to be. Kael was staring at me, a silent testament to the power of the forbidden touch. He had not shifted. He was still a man, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly agape. He saw me not as an enemy, not as a weak, unshifted girl, but as a being of immense, breathtaking power. My wolf, a graceful and magnificent creature, looked at him and then gave a single, triumphant bark, a sound that echoed through the quiet night. My human mind was still present, a conscious thought hovering just behind the wild instincts of my wolf. It was telling me to run, to flee this dangerous place, to find my pack and show them what I could do. But another voice, a primal, ancient voice, told me to stay, to protect the human who had freed me, to stand by the one who held the key to my strength. I took a tentative step toward him, my body feeling more natural, more at home in this form than it had ever been in my human skin. He reached out to me, his hand hesitant. I let him touch me, his hand stroking the soft fur of my neck, and the feeling was not painful this time. It was a deep, resonant hum of pleasure, a reaffirming warmth that told me this was right, that this was what I was meant to be. He was my anchor, my touchstone, the one who made me whole. He sank to his knees, his face level with mine. "I knew it," he whispered, his voice a low, reverent tone. "I felt it, the power within you. It was like a dormant volcano, and my touch it was the fire that ignited it." He wasn't afraid. He was in awe. And in that moment, I knew that whatever happened, whatever the consequences, I was not going to leave him. He had given me a gift that no one else could, a gift that was more precious than any jewel or any position in my pack. He had given me myself. I nudged his hand with my muzzle, a gesture of affection that startled him for a moment before a slow, gentle smile spread across his face, transforming his features from a grim mask of a warrior to a kind and open expression. I knew then that this was the beginning of something profound and dangerous. The secret of my wolf was now bound to the obsidian claws, to the one who had awakened it. And I knew that our lives were now inextricably linked in a way that would either unite our packs or tear them apart. But as I sat there, a fully shifted wolf for the first time in my life, under the watchful gaze of the Obsidian Claw who was my enemy and my salvation, I didn't feel fear. I felt a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. And I knew that from this night on, nothing would ever be the same. The world was now a place of limitless possibilities, a place where a touch could mean both love and war, a place where a single person could hold the key to a lifetime of freedom. I was a wolf, finally, and I was not alone. The moon continued to climb, a silent witness to the impossible. The woods were now my domain, and he, the enemy, was my companion. We had found each other across a boundary of blood and hatred, and in a single touch we had forged a new path, a path that was shrouded in danger, but also illuminated by the brightest of lights. I let out a deep, satisfied sigh, the sound a low, rumbling vibration in my chest. This was what I had been missing my entire life. And I had finally found it. It was a terrifying and beautiful beginning, a truth that would either set us free or bind us in a deadly secret forever. He was no longer just a shadow across the creek, but a tangible, breathing presence, a warrior from the rival pack who had, with a single touch, unlocked the very essence of my being. I stood in my wolf form, the pure white of my fur, a beacon in the moonlit darkness, my heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and an exhilarating, newfound power. Kael, still on his knees, was a statue of awe, his icy blue eyes fixed on me with a look of profound wonder. My wolf, a creature I had only ever dreamed of, was real. She was strong, her muscles coiled with a latent energy I had never known. She was a being of pure instinct, and yet my human mind, Lyra's mind, was still present, a conscious thought hovering just behind the wild instincts of the beast. We were a contradiction, a paradox. He, a human form warrior from the Obsidian Claws, knelt before me, a wolf of the Moonshadows, our positions reversed from the natural order of our packs. My wolf nudged his hand with my muzzle, a gesture that was both a thank you and an exploration. His touch was no longer a shock, but a reaffirming warmth, a gentle hum that resonated deep within my bones. He smiled then, the genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his face, and in that moment, the years of hatred, the generations of enmity, seemed to melt away into the quiet, starlit night. "I knew it," he whispered again, his voice a low, reverent rumble. "I felt it in your scent, Lyra. It was like a dormant volcano, and, when I touched you, a single spark." I moved away from him, my paws silent on the mossy ground. The world was a canvas of new sensations. The scent of him, so complex and intoxicating in my human form, was now a symphony of notes. The rich, earthy smell of deep woods, the sharp tang of rain, and something else, something distinctly his own, a scent that was both wild and undeniably a part of me now. I felt a deep, primal connection to him, a bond that was both terrifying and utterly, irrevocably right. My human mind, however, was already screaming a litany of impossibilities. This was forbidden. This was dangerous. This could start a war. But my wolf, a creature of a different kind of logic, was simply content. She was finally whole, and the one who had made her so was standing right in front of her. I felt the urge to shift back to my human form. The transformation was still a new and frightening concept. I looked at Kael, a silent plea in my eyes. He seemed to understand, his own gaze holding a deep empathy. He rose to his feet, his movements slow and deliberate, a show of respect. He held out his hand, an unspoken question hanging in the air. I hesitated for a moment, the natural human wariness of an enemy fighting with the wolf's instinctive trust. The wolf won. I nudged my head against his palm, and the familiar fire, the incredible pain and pleasure of transformation, began again. My bones twisted, my body contracted, and with a soft pop, I was human again, naked and vulnerable in the cool night air. I looked at him, my eyes wide with the raw emotion of the moment, and he, without a word, took off his tunic and wrapped it around my shoulders. The fabric, still warm from his body, smelled of him, a scent that was already becoming a strange and intoxicating comfort. "We have to talk," I said, my voice barely a whisper. This can't happen again." But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. I had been given the one thing I had always longed for, and the thought of giving it up, of returning to the unshifted girl I had been, was a pain so profound it stole the air from my lungs. He nodded, his face serious now, the moment of awe replaced by a grim realization of the danger we were in. "It will happen again," he said, his voice low and firm. "You know that. You need me. And I need to understand this. My touch-it's a key to your strength. I've never heard of anything like it." We sat on the bank of the creek, the moon now directly overhead. Our conversation a low, murmured exchange that was a stark contrast to the usual hostility between our packs. He told me about his life as the Alpha's son of the Obsidian Claws, a life of rigid expectations and ruthless training. They were a pack built on strength and power, a brutal meritocracy where a single moment of weakness could be a death sentence. He told me of the constant pressure to be stronger, faster, more ruthless than anyone else. I, in turn, told him of my life as the daughter of a beta in the Moonshadows, a pack that valued community and peace, but where I had always been an outcast, a symbol of a family's quiet shame. We were two sides of the same coin, two solitary beings in a world that demanded conformity. "My pack will kill me if they find out I was with an unshifted Moonshadow," he said, his voice a low, grim whisper. "They see you as weak, as a pack of cowards who are a stain on the ancient laws of our kind. If they found out I helped you shift, they would see it as a betrayal." I shivered, not from the cold, but from the chilling truth of his words. "My pack would brand me a traitor," I said, the words a bitter taste in my mouth. "They would say, you bewitched me, that this is a trick. We were caught in a trap of our own making, a beautiful, impossible trap that could tear our worlds apart. We needed to create a story, a lie that would explain my sudden shift, and we needed to find a way to meet again, in secret, so I could train, so I could embrace the wolf that had been dormant for so long. We agreed to meet here, at the Coldwater Creek, 2 nights from now, in the same hour of twilight. The risk was enormous, but the alternative, a life of quiet shame and weakness, was a risk I was no longer willing to take. I felt a surge of courage, a fire that was not just from the shift, but from the connection I had forged with this boy, this enemy, who had somehow become my lifeline. He walked me to the edge of the creek, his hand never leaving my shoulder, a silent promise of his presence. As I turned to leave, he pulled me into a quick, decisive hug, his arms a warm, solid embrace. "Be safe, Lyra," he said, his voice a low, desperate plea. "Don't get caught." I nodded, and then, without another word, I crossed the creek and vanished into the darkness of my own territory, leaving behind a boy who was no longer just the son of a rival alpha, but the keeper of my most profound and dangerous secret. The walk back to my pack's village was a blur, my senses still reeling from the experience. The forest, which had always felt so familiar, now seemed to hold a new kind of magic, a deeper, more profound mystery that I was only just beginning to understand. I reached my den, a small, quiet cave on the outskirts of the main village, and slipped inside, the fabric of Kael's tunic still wrapped around my shoulders, a tangible reminder of the impossible night. My parents were waiting for me, their faces etched with a familiar worry. "Lyra, you're late," my mother said, her voice a mix of concern and relief. We were starting to worry. I looked at them, at the faces of the people who loved me more than anyone in the world, and I knew I had to tell them a lie. It was a lie of kindness, a lie that would protect them from the truth, from the war that my secret could ignite. "I was at the edge of the grove," I began, the words tumbling out in a rush, a carefully crafted story. I felt a stirring, a sensation. I was alone, and I felt the moonlight on my skin, and the strength of our ancestors was with me, and then I shifted. The lie felt both exhilarating and sickening. My parents, however, didn't hesitate. They threw their arms around me, their faces a mixture of relief and overwhelming joy. My father, Alden, his stoic facade finally cracking, held me close, tears streaming down his face. "My daughter," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I knew it. I knew your wolf would come. You are a true Moonshadow." His words, so full of love and pride, felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I had given them what they had always wanted, but I had done so with a lie, a betrayal that felt more profound than any hatred I could have felt for the enemy. Over the next 2 days, the village was a whirlwind of celebration. I was no longer a ghost in the machine, but a fully fledged member of the pack. The looks of quiet pity were replaced by looks of awe and respect. The younger wolves, who had once been my playful tormentors, now sought me out, their curiosity a warm, gentle thing. My sister, Wren, was the most overjoyed of all. She hugged me, her small, slender body a tight, fierce embrace. "I knew you could do it," she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I always knew you had a wolf inside you." It was a bittersweet moment, one I wished I could have had honestly, but the joy on her face was a powerful balm to the guilt I felt. I was no longer the unshifted girl, and the freedom, the sense of belonging, was a powerful intoxication. But I knew, deep in my soul, that this newfound freedom was a borrowed thing, a thing I could only truly hold on to with the help of the one person I was supposed to despise. The twilight of the second day found me at the Coldwater Creek, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The air was cool and crisp, a single star, the first of the night, shining in the pale sky. I waited, and as the last of the sun's light faded from the horizon, he emerged from the shadows. Kael. He was a silent, powerful figure, a warrior of the Obsidian Claws. And yet, when his eyes met mine, all I saw was the boy who had knelt before me, the boy who held the key to my soul. He came to me, and without a word, he took my hands. The familiar jolt of electricity, the spark that ignited the fire within, raced through me, and for the second time in my life, I felt the glorious, agonizing transformation. I was a wolf, a pure white, magnificent wolf. My body, no longer plagued by the weight of my shame, was now a lean, powerful instrument of purpose. I shook myself, the sheer joy of it a palpable thing, and I let out a low, satisfied growl. I looked at him, and I could feel the pride radiating from him. A silent, unspoken admiration that was more powerful than any praise. "It's real," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "The touch is the key, the spark that ignites the flame." And so, our secret training began. It was a ritual of trust and vulnerability. He would touch me, and I would shift. He would teach me the ways of the wolf, the things a human could not possibly know. He taught me how to move silently, how to track a scent on the wind, how to use my senses to their full potential. We were not just two people, two enemies, in the woods. We were a single, unified force, a powerful partnership that defied all logic, all history, all blood feuds. He was teaching me to be a warrior for my own pack, and in the process, he was also teaching me to see a different world, a world where the lines between friend and enemy were not so black and white, a world where a touch could be an act of both love and war. Our nights were a blur of training and conversation. We would shift, and I would run through the forest, my body a magnificent blur of motion, with him running silently at my side. He was a powerful wolf, a creature of pure, unadulterated strength, and his presence was a comforting, solid anchor in the wild chaos of my newfound reality. We would stop, and he would tell me of the history of his pack, the history of brutal conquest and unyielding power. He spoke of the pressures he faced, the constant battle for supremacy, the endless need to prove his worth. I told him of my pack, of our peaceful traditions, of our quiet strength, and of my lifelong struggle to find my place within it. We were not so different, we realized. We were both products of our world, and yet we were both so profoundly alone. The attraction, once a faint, simmering undercurrent, was now a powerful, undeniable force. When he touched me to initiate the shift, the sensation was no longer just a source of power, but a deep, resonant pleasure that started in my core and radiated outward. It was an unspoken, forbidden intimacy, a connection that went beyond the physical, a deep, soul-shattering bond that defied all the rules of our world. One night, after a particularly rigorous training session, I shifted back to my human form, the moon casting a silver glow on my face. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a raw, honest emotion, that was both terrifying and beautiful. He reached out and touched my cheek, a gesture that no longer ignited a shift, but simply a deep, soulful connection. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, his thumb stroking my cheekbone. The moment was so charged, so fragile, that I felt a tremor of pure, unadulterated longing. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice thick with a raw, honest emotion. This is more than just the shifting. I feel it. I feel a connection to you that I've never felt to anyone else. It's a bond." I leaned into his touch, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "I know," I whispered, the words a raw, honest confession. "I feel it too. It's a bond. It's a bond that could get us both killed." The words hung in the air, a sobering reminder of the reality that lay just beyond our small, stolen moments of intimacy. But for a fleeting, beautiful second, the danger didn't matter. All that mattered was the feel of his hand on my face, the raw, honest emotion in his eyes, and the quiet, undeniable truth that we were no longer just enemies. We were something else entirely. We were a bond, a connection that defied all reason. And we both knew, deep in our hearts, that we were irrevocably lost to each other. We were a beautiful, impossible paradox, and we were both terrified and utterly, completely captivated. The following weeks were a dizzying blur of secret meetings and dangerous transformations. By day, I was a respected member of the Moonshadow pack, a new wolf who was praised for her swiftness and power. The training with Kael was paying off. I was faster than any of the younger wolves, my senses more acute, my instincts sharper. I was becoming the warrior my father had always wanted me to be, but it was all built on a foundation of lies and a dangerous, forbidden intimacy with the son of the enemy Alpha. The guilt of my deception weighed on me, a heavy cloak I could never quite shed, but the exhilaration of my newfound strength and the intoxicating connection I had with Kael was a powerful antidote. We would meet at the Coldwater Creek, and his touch would be the key to my freedom. I would shift, and we would run through the woods, our two forms a blur of white and black, a beautiful, impossible contradiction. Our bond deepened with every passing night. We learned each other's fears, our dreams, our secret vulnerabilities. He told me of the constant pressure from his father, a ruthless, demanding alpha who saw Kael not as a son, but as a weapon to be sharpened and wielded. He spoke of the expectations to be brutal, to be unyielding, to be the very embodiment of the Obsidian Claw ferocity. He confessed that sometimes he felt like a monster, a creature of pure, unadulterated violence. I, in turn, told him of the quiet shame I had carried for years, the loneliness of being an unshifted wolf in a pack that took their strength for granted. I told him how his touch had not just given me the ability to shift, but had given me the courage to be myself, to be whole. The lines between our packs, between friend and enemy, were blurring. The conflict that had once been a black and white truth was now a complex, nuanced tapestry of shared pain and growing affection. He was no longer just the son of the enemy Alpha. He was Kael, the boy who had knelt before me in the moonlight, the boy who had looked at me with awe instead of pity, the boy who had seen a broken girl and had, with a single touch, made her whole. I was no longer just Lyra, the unshifted girl. I was a warrior, a powerful wolf, and I was in love with my enemy. The realization hit me with a force that stole the breath from my lungs. It was a terrifying, beautiful, and utterly impossible truth. The peace between our packs, however, was a fragile thing, a thin veil that was slowly being torn to shreds. There were rumors of skirmishes, of raids on our border patrols, and of increasingly hostile encounters. The two worlds we lived in were on a collision course, and our secret, our beautiful, dangerous secret, was at the heart of it all. One morning, I woke to the sound of my father, Alden, speaking in a low, grim voice to my mother. "It's getting worse, Lyra," he said, his voice heavy with a grim certainty. "They're getting more aggressive. The Obsidian Claws. Their Alpha is pushing them to take our land. I'm worried it's only a matter of time before we're at war." His words were a cold bucket of water thrown over my newfound happiness. My heart felt like a lead weight in my chest. The wolf that Kael had trained, the one that was so strong and so confident, was now meant to be used against him, against his pack. I felt a profound, heart-wrenching conflict, a fierce battle between my loyalty to my family and my burgeoning love for the boy who had set me free. My life was now a lie, a dangerous dance between two worlds, and I was slowly, irrevocably being pulled apart. That night, when I met Kael at the creek, the usual exhilaration of the shift was replaced by a sense of foreboding. He came to me, and, as his fingers brushed my hand, the usual jolt of electricity was laced with a different kind of current, a current of fear and uncertainty. I shifted, my body responding with its usual speed and grace, and stood before him, my white fur a silent accusation in the darkness. "They're getting ready for war," I said, the words a low growl from my throat. "My father said it's a matter of time. They're getting more aggressive." He sighed, a low, defeated sound. He shifted, his own body a blur of black and grey, and stood before me, a magnificent, powerful beast. "I know," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble from his wolf form. "My father is pushing for it. He sees your pack's quiet nature as a weakness. He wants to wipe you out, to take this land for himself. He thinks he's stronger, more powerful." The truth was a bitter, painful thing. My strength, the very thing I was using to defend my pack, had been given to me by the one who wanted to destroy them. It was a profound, soul-shattering irony. We stood there, two wolves of opposing packs, our bodies a stark contrast of black and white, our souls tied together by a thread of pure, unadulterated love. "What are we going to do?" I asked, the words a silent plea that echoed through the quiet forest. He nudged my head with his, a comforting, loving gesture that was so out of place in our world. "I don't know," he said, his voice filled with a desperate, hopeless sadness. "We're caught in the middle. We can't fight each other, but we can't stop them from fighting either." The next morning, the fragile peace was shattered. I woke to the frantic sound of a pack alarm, a series of short, sharp barks that meant only one thing: war. I rushed to the main village, my heart in my throat. My father and the other warriors were already gathered, their faces grim. "The Obsidian Claws attacked our northern border," my father said, his voice a low, steady command. "They wounded our patrols and stole some of our cattle. This is it. We're going to war." The words hit me, with the force of a physical blow. The world, which had just been a beautiful, complicated place of love and a forbidden connection, was now a place of blood and violence, and I was at the heart of it all. I was the one who held the secret that could either unite our packs or tear them apart, and I was about to go to war with the boy I loved. The war began with a series of quick, vicious raids. I fought with a ferocity that surprised even myself, my white wolf a blur of motion in the thick of the fray. My packmates were in awe of my speed and my strength. They called me the White Ghost, a name that struck fear into the hearts of the Obsidian Claws. But in the midst of the chaos, in the heat of battle, I was constantly looking for him. I saw him once, a powerful dark blur in the chaos, his eyes, those familiar icy blue eyes, locking with mine for a fleeting, terrifying second. We were on opposite sides, two warriors of different packs, and yet, in that single, shared glance, I felt a deep, heart-wrenching pain. We were fighting each other's people, a truth that was both a torment and a betrayal. I fought for my family, for my pack, but every time I saw one of his warriors, every time I took a life, I felt the phantom pain of his touch, the touch that had made me who I was. The war escalated, and the nights of secret meetings and quiet conversations were replaced with nights of restless sleep and a constant, gnawing anxiety. The moon, once a symbol of our stolen moments, was now a silent, disapproving witness to the bloodshed. The bond between Kael and I, once a beautiful source of strength, was now a source of profound, soul-crushing conflict. I could feel his pain, a phantom ache in my chest, and I knew he could feel mine. We were fighting the very people we loved, and our shared secret, the beautiful, impossible truth of our connection, was slowly, irrevocably tearing us apart. One night, I couldn't bear the silence any longer. I snuck away from my den and ran to the creek, my feet flying over the familiar ground. I'd found him there, already waiting for me, his body a silent, imposing shadow in the moonlight. "We have to stop this," I said, my voice thick with a raw, desperate emotion. "We have to end this, before it's too late." He nodded, his eyes filled with a grief that mirrored my own. He reached out and touched my hand, and for a moment, the heat of the shift was not a source of power, but a source of profound comfort. I shifted, and in my wolf form, I sat before him, the white of my fur a stark contrast to his dark hair and his grim expression. "I've tried to talk to my father," he said, his voice a low, defeated whisper. "He won't listen. He sees this as a chance to finally destroy your pack. He won't stop until he has your land, until he has broken your people." His words were a knife in my gut. My love for him, my connection to him, was now the very thing that was fueling the war, the thing that was giving my pack a reason to fight. We were a beautiful, terrifying paradox, and we were trapped in a war that our love had started. We had to find a way to end it, before it was too late, before we lost each other, before we lost everything. The tension was a physical presence in the pack, a heavy cloud that hung over every den and every conversation. The celebration of my shift was now a distant memory, replaced by the grim reality of war. I was a warrior, a hero to my people, but every victory felt hollow, every battle a profound betrayal of the boy I loved. One day, a scout came running into the village, his face pale, with a mix of terror and triumph. "We have him," he panted, his voice a shaky whisper. "We found him, the son of the Alpha, the one they call Kael. We have him cornered." The world seemed to stop. The blood drained from my face, and I felt a cold dread so profound it stole the air from my lungs. My father, his face grim, nodded his approval. "Go," he commanded the warriors. "Bring him here. We will make an example of him." I stood there, frozen, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions. My love for him, my loyalty to my pack, the impossible choice that had just been forced upon me. I knew what I had to do. I had to save him. I had to reveal my secret, to show them the truth, to risk everything for the boy who had given me my life. I ran. I ran faster than I had ever run before, my legs a blur of motion, my heart a desperate, frantic drum. I ran through the forest, past the trees and the familiar paths, toward the place where my love, my enemy, was about to meet his fate. I found them there, in a clearing near the creek, a group of Moonshadow warriors surrounding him, their faces a mixture of triumph and bloodlust. He was on his knees, his hands tied, his face a mask of grim acceptance. His eyes, those beautiful, icy blue eyes, found mine, and in them I saw a profound, heart-wrenching sadness. "Stop!" I screamed, my voice raw and desperate. "Stop this! He is not your enemy." The warriors turned to me, their faces a mixture of confusion and anger. My father, his expression a mask of grim determination, looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he demanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "He is the son of the enemy Alpha. He is the one who has been leading the attacks on our people." I shook my head, my hands trembling. "No," I said, my voice a shaky whisper. "He's not. He's the one who gave me my wolf." The words hung in the air, a shocking, impossible truth. My father looked at me, his eyes wide with a profound, soul-shattering disbelief. The warriors around us were a sea of confused, angry faces. They were looking at me, at the white wolf who had been their hero, and they were looking at the boy who was her enemy, and they didn't understand. "What are you talking about?" my father asked, his voice filled with a desperate, furious confusion. I looked at Kael, at the boy who had given me my life, and I knew what I had to do. It was a risky, terrifying thing. But it was the only way. I walked toward him, my body a silent, imposing silhouette in the quiet clearing. I knelt before him, and I took his hands in mine. The warriors around me gasped, their voices a shocked whisper. My father's face was a mask of a profound, heart-wrenching betrayal. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he pleaded, his voice a desperate, terrified whisper. "Don't do this. Don't do this to me." But I didn't listen. I looked at Kael, and I saw a silent plea in his eyes, a plea for trust, a plea for a new beginning. I took a deep breath, and I said the words that would either save us both or doom us both. I am not a wolf of my own accord, I said, my voice strong and clear. I am a wolf because of him. He is the one who gave me my wolf. He is the key to my strength. I looked at my father, and I saw the betrayal in his eyes, the deep, soul-shattering betrayal that I had inflicted on the man who had always loved me more than anything in the world. I knew that I had to show them the truth that was so powerful it could either save us all or tear us apart. I am going to shift, I said, my voice a low, steady whisper. And you will all see. The moment I shift, the moment my power comes, it is a testament to the fact that his touch, our bond, is the only thing that can make me whole. It is a bond of a new kind. It is a bond that can unite our two worlds, not tear them apart. My father stood there, his face a mask of a profound, heart-wrenching grief. He looked at me, at the daughter he had always loved, and he saw a stranger, a traitor, who was giving her heart to the enemy. But I knew that I had to show him the truth. I had to show them all. I looked at Kael, and I felt his hand tighten on mine. The world seemed to stop, the air thick with tension, with a profound, terrifying anticipation. This was it. This was the moment of truth. This was the moment that would either save us all or condemn us all to a life of war and hatred. And I, Lyra, the unshifted girl who was now a wolf, was ready to face the consequences, no matter what they were. I was no longer a phantom. I was a warrior who was fighting not for her pack, but for the boy she loved. A warrior who was fighting for a future that was not built on hatred and blood, but on a beautiful, impossible paradox. A paradox that was born in the quiet of the night, and that was about to change the world forever. The silence that fell over the clearing was so absolute, it was a physical presence. The moon, now high in the night sky, cast a brilliant, cold light on the faces of my pack, each a mask of disbelief and confusion. My father, Alden, had not moved. His face was etched with a profound betrayal, the pain in his eyes a more potent weapon than any sword or claw. He looked at me, at the daughter who had confessed to an unholy truth, and then at Kael, the enemy's son, the one who held my hands and, in his hands, held the key to my very existence. The warriors around us, their initial fury, now replaced by a stunned, disoriented silence, looked from me to him and back again, unable to reconcile the two conflicting images in their minds, the powerful white ghost of the Moonshadows, and the enemy Alpha's son, a prisoner who held her captive not with chains, but with a simple touch. Lyra, my father's voice was a low, pained whisper, the sound of a heart breaking. This is impossible. He has bewitched you. I shook my head, my eyes pleading with his. No, Papa, he hasn't. He didn't bewitch me. He set me free. The words, spoken in the quiet of the clearing, felt like a thunderclap. My father's hand, which had been resting on the hilt of his hunting knife, slowly, reluctantly, fell to his side. His eyes, so full of pain and betrayal just moments ago, now held a hint of something else, something akin to a terrifying curiosity. He had seen my strength. He had seen my prowess in battle. He had seen the way I moved, a blur of white fur and raw power. He had always believed in me, always told me my wolf would come. And now I was telling him the truth of how it had. And the truth was more terrifying and more miraculous than any myth. I looked at Kael, at the boy who was both my enemy and my salvation. His hands were still entwined with mine, his touch a constant, calming presence. I knew what I had to do. I had to show them. I had to make them believe. I closed my eyes and I focused on the feeling of his hands in mine, on the warmth that was now so familiar, so right. I let the sensation fill me, that wonderful, agonizing, exhilarating fire that started in my core and spread through every cell of my body. My muscles tensed. My bones began their slow, painful dance of transformation. The sound of a collective gasp went through the crowd as my body, in full view of my pack, began to twist and contort, my human form giving way to the wild, magnificent creature I was. It was a terrifyingly vulnerable process, a moment of complete and total exposure, a testament to the trust I had placed in Kael. But I trusted him. I trusted him with my life, with my pack, with everything. With a final, satisfying pop, I was a wolf, a magnificent white wolf, standing on all fours, my head held high, my paws planted firmly on the earth. I was whole. I was complete. My senses, as always, were a symphony of sensations, but now they were not just a source of power, they were also a source of truth. I looked at my father, and I felt his surprise, his shock, his disbelief, and a flicker of something else. Something that felt like the beginnings of a profound understanding. He was seeing the truth with his own eyes. He was seeing the impossibility of it all. I was a wolf because of the enemy's touch. It was a truth that defied all logic, all hatred, all blood feuds. It was a truth that was more powerful than any weapon. I took a step toward my father, my ears twitching, my gaze unwavering. The warriors around me, their hands now off their weapons, were a sea of bewildered faces. They saw me not as a hero or a traitor, but as a living, breathing paradox. I let out a low, mournful howl, a sound that was not just a communication, but a plea. It was a plea for peace. It was a plea for understanding. It was a plea for a new kind of world. Kael, still on the ground, his eyes filled with a raw, honest emotion, watched me, a silent witness to the moment of truth. I nudged my father's hand with my muzzle, a gesture of affection and a silent command. He hesitated for a moment, and then, slowly, reluctantly, his hand came up and stroked the soft fur on my head. In that moment, the years of hatred, the generations of conflict, seemed to melt away, replaced by the simple, profound truth of a father's love for his daughter. "It's real," he whispered, his voice thick with a profound, soul-shattering emotion. "It's all real." He looked at Kael, and for the first time, he saw not an enemy, but the boy who had, with a single touch, given his daughter a life she had always been denied. My father rose to his feet, and he looked at the warriors around him, at the faces of the people he had led for so long, and his expression was a mix of confusion and a quiet, dawning understanding. "Release him," he commanded, his voice a low, steady rumble. The warriors, still in a state of shock, hesitated for a moment, and then, slowly, hesitantly, they undid the ropes that bound Kael's hands. Kael rose to his feet, his gaze never leaving mine. He was no longer a prisoner. He was a partner. My father, Alden, looked at him, and for the first time, a flicker of a profound curiosity entered his gaze. He saw not the enemy Alpha's son, but the boy who had given his daughter her life. "What is this?" he asked, his voice filled with a desperate, furious confusion. "What is this bond?" Kael looked at me, at the wolf that was now a magnificent, powerful creature because of him, and he took a step toward me. He didn't need to touch me, to know. He knew. We were bound by something that was more powerful than any pack, any blood feud, any hatred. We were bound by the impossible truth of our connection. I shifted back, the process just as painful and exhilarating as the first time, and I stood before them all, my body now a testament to the bond that we shared. I was no longer Lyra, the unshifted girl. I was a warrior, a leader, and I was in love with my enemy. My father looked at me, at the daughter who had just risked everything to save the boy she loved, and his face was a mix of a profound, heart-wrenching understanding and a desperate, terrifying hope. He saw a new path, a new future, a future where our two worlds could be united, not torn apart. He saw a future where a single touch could be an act of both love and war, and he knew, deep in his heart, that it was a future that was worth fighting for. And so, our story began, a story that was not built on a foundation of hatred and blood, but on a beautiful, impossible paradox, a paradox that was born in the quiet of the night and that was about to change the Pain world forever. The whispers of the old hatred had been replaced by a new kind of truth, one that was far more powerful, a truth that was born in the quiet of the night and that was about to change the world forever. The news of the discovery spread like wildfire through the Moonshadow pack. The warriors who had been present at the clearing returned to the village, their faces a mix of confusion, disbelief, and a quiet, dawning awe. They had seen the impossible with their own eyes. They had seen the enemy's son give the unshifted girl her wolf. The story, as it was told and retold, was a mix of myth and truth, a legend that was born in a single, terrifying moment of revelation. My father, Alden, a man of profound honor and deep-seated tradition, was a tormented soul. He was torn between his duty to his pack and the undeniable, impossible truth of what he had just witnessed. He called a council of the elders, the wisest and most respected members of our pack, and he told them the story. He spoke of my years of quiet shame, of my sudden, impossible shift, and of the role that Kael, the enemy, had played in it all. The elders were a mix of skeptics and believers. Some saw it as a trick, a powerful spell cast by a ruthless enemy to weaken us from within. Others saw it as a sign, a prophecy, a new path that was being laid out for us by the spirits of our ancestors. The debate raged for hours, a cacophony of raised voices and competing arguments. I sat outside the council chambers, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I knew that my fate, our fate, rested in their hands. Kael, a prisoner who was now a guest, was in a secure den, under the watchful, but no longer hostile gaze of my father. He was no longer the enemy. He was a living, breathing paradox, a symbol of a new and terrifying kind of truth. The council finally emerged, their faces a mixture of weariness and quiet determination. My father, his face still etched with the pain of a profound, soul-shattering confusion, looked at me, and his voice was a low, steady command. "We have reached a decision, Lyra," he said, his voice filled with a heavy, profound gravity. "We believe you. We believe that this is not a trick, but a bond, a powerful and ancient bond that we do not understand, but we cannot accept it without proof. We cannot accept it without the full, unadulterated truth. N. I looked at him, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew what he was asking for. He was asking for a public demonstration. He was asking for a show of my vulnerability and my strength, a show that would prove to them all that our bond was not a weakness, but a profound and powerful truth. The next day, a summons was sent to the Obsidian Claws. A truce was called, a temporary ceasefire, a pause in the war that had been raging for weeks. The message was simple and direct. The Moonshadows had something to show them, something that would change everything. The tension in the air was so thick, it was a physical presence. The warriors of both packs, their faces etched with suspicion and hatred, stood on opposite sides of the clearing. The alphas of both packs stood at the center, their faces a mask of grim determination. Kael's father, a powerful, ruthless man with eyes as cold and unforgiving as his son's were blue, looked at his son, and a mixture of confusion and a profound, bone-deep suspicion settled over his features. "What is this, Kael?" he demanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "What is this trick?" Kael, standing tall and proud, his hands now free, looked at his father, and for the first time, a defiance I had never seen before entered his gaze. "It is not a trick, father," he said, his voice a steady, firm counterpoint to his father's anger. "It is the truth, a truth that you have to see to believe." I walked to the center of the clearing, the two packs, a sea of bewildered, angry faces, staring at me. I was wearing a simple tunic, my body a testament to the fact that I was not a warrior, but a peacemaker. I looked at my father, at his face, a mixture of a profound, heart-wrenching hope and a desperate, terrifying fear. I looked at Kael's father, at his face, a mask of a profound, soul-shattering rage. And then I looked at Kael. He was standing there, a warrior of a rival pack, and he was the keeper of my soul. I walked to him, and in front of both of our packs, in front of the people who had been at war for generations, I took his hands in mine. The air was thick with tension, with a profound, terrifying anticipation. This was it. This was the moment of truth. This was the moment that would either save us all or condemn us all to a life of war and hatred. I closed my eyes and I focused on his touch, on the fire, the warmth, the power that had become so familiar, so right. I let the sensation fill me, that wonderful, agonizing, exhilarating fire that started in my core and spread through every cell of my body. My muscles tensed, my bones began their slow, painful dance of transformation. The sound of a collective gasp went through the crowd as my body, in full view of my pack, and in full view of his pack, began to twist and contort, my human form giving way to the wild, magnificent creature I was. It was a terrifyingly vulnerable process, a moment of complete and total exposure, a testament to the trust I had placed in Kael. But I trusted him. I trusted him with my life, with our packs, with everything. With a final, satisfying pop, I was a wolf, a magnificent white wolf, standing on all fours, my head held high, my paws planted firmly on the earth. The sound of a collective, shocked whisper went through the crowd. I was a living, breathing paradox. I was a Moonshadow, a creature of light and peace, and yet I was born of the touch of an Obsidian Claw, a creature of darkness and war. My father's face was a mask of a profound, heart-wrenching triumph. He looked at Kael's father, at his face, a mask of a profound, soul-shattering disbelief. He had seen the impossible with his own eyes. He had seen the proof that was more powerful than any weapon, more powerful than any hatred. I looked at Kael, and he looked at me. His hands, which had been holding mine just moments ago, were now empty, but the bond between us was a tangible, living thing, a thread of pure, unadulterated love and a terrifying, magnificent power. I let out a low, mournful howl, a sound that was not just a communication, but a plea. It was a plea for peace. It was a plea for understanding. It was a plea for a new kind of world. Kael, his eyes filled with a raw, honest emotion, took a step toward me. He didn't need to touch me, to know. He knew. We were bound by something that was more powerful than any pack, any blood feud, any hatred. We were bound by the impossible truth of our connection. Kael's father, the ruthless, unforgiving alpha of the Obsidian Claws, was now a crumpled, defeated figure. He had seen the impossible with his own eyes. He had seen the truth that defied all logic, all hatred, all blood feuds. He had seen the living, breathing paradox that was his son and the Moonshadow wolf. He looked at his son, at the boy who had just risked everything for a love that was impossible, and he saw not a traitor, but a leader who was not born of hatred, but of a profound and powerful bond. He looked at my father, at the two of us, a united, unstoppable force, and he knew that he had been defeated, not by a sword or a claw, but by a simple, profound truth. This changes everything, he said, his voice a low, defeated whisper. This is a new path. My father nodded, his face a mixture of a profound, heart-wrenching relief and a terrifying, beautiful hope. Yes, he said, his voice filled with a new kind of strength. Yes, it is. And so, the war that had been raging for weeks, the war that had been built on a foundation of hatred and blood, was over. It was not over with a battle, but with a simple, profound act of love and truth. We were no longer enemies. We were a new kind of family, a new kind of pack, a new kind of world. And we, Lyra, the unshifted girl, who was now a wolf, and Kael, the son of the enemy Alpha, were at the heart of it all. We were a beautiful, impossible paradox. and we were about to change the world forever. The whispers of the old hatred had been replaced by a new kind of truth, one that was far more powerful, a truth that was born in the quiet of the night and that was about to change the world forever. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of negotiations and a cautious, tentative peace. The Moonshadows and the Obsidian Claws, two packs that had been at war for generations, were now united by a single, impossible truth. The sight of our two packs, a mix of light and dark, standing together in the same clearing, was a testament to the profound and powerful change that had taken place. There were still those who were suspicious, those who held on to the old hatreds, but they were a minority, their whispers drowned out by the roar of the new world that was being born. Kael and I were a constant presence, a symbol of the new alliance. We were no longer outcasts, but leaders. We were no longer enemies, but partners. We were no longer a beautiful, impossible paradox, but a new and powerful reality. Our bond, once a source of profound and soul-crushing conflict, was now a source of strength, a beacon of hope for both of our packs. The day came when Kael and I stood together in the center of the clearing, our hands entwined, our eyes locked in a silent promise. The two alphas, our fathers, stood beside us, their faces a mixture of a profound, heart-wrenching pride and a quiet, dawning understanding. They had seen the truth. They had seen the power of a bond that was more powerful than any hatred, any blood feud, any war. They had seen the living, breathing paradox that was their children, and they had chosen to believe. The war that had been raging for weeks, the war that had been built on a foundation of hatred and blood, was over. It was not over with a battle, but with a simple, profound act of love and truth. We were no longer enemies. We were a new kind of family, a new kind of pack, a new kind of world. And we, Lyra, the unshifted girl who was now a wolf, and Kael, the son of the enemy Alpha, were at the heart of it all. We were a beautiful, impossible paradox, and we were about to change the world forever. The whispers of the old hatred had been replaced by a new kind of truth, one that was far more powerful, a truth that was born in the quiet of the night, and that was about to change the world forever.